Welcome to In Darkness the Light Still Shines. I'm Barry Feaker, Executive Director of the Topeka Rescue Mission.
And I'm Jessica Hossman. I'm a Senior Director here at the Topeka Rescue Mission.
Jessica, we're going to talk about impossible today. Impossible. There's a lot of impossibilities that seem to be going on in the world right now.
Absolutely.
Topeka Rescue Mission is facing one of those times again where we are looking at what would seem an impossible mountain to climb financially because of drop in giving in 2019. And so a lot of questions have been coming up around, what are you going to do? How did you get here? Those kind of things. And so, before we get into that, there's a story in Darkness the Light Still Shines. It's in chapter 27. The title is Acquiring the Impossible. Mm-hmm. Well, we can acquire a lot of impossible in our lives. Right. There are a lot of things that hit us that we just don't see any way out of. And the story relates back in 1989 when the old rescue mission began to crumble, literally falling down. And we were looking at that time in the mission's history about a $200,000 a year budget, which was a lot of money. Yeah. A lot of money over the year. That's not even 1 month of Topeka Rescue Mission today. But in 1989, it was crumbling, and we were faced with either quitting or moving forward. Yeah. And so the moving forward was to build another rescue mission, and that was going to be $1.5 million. I'd never heard of anybody raising $1.5 million. I mean, I'm just a guy from Topeka, Kansas. We've got this little tiny homeless service here in the community that was definitely of great value, and more people were coming than we could put in that old rescue mission back in those days. But when I remember March 15th, very clearly in the morning, when a big old rock fell out of the ceiling in this old rescue mission, crashed through the ceiling, and a man had just been in a red chair in the men's dormitory, had just got up after tying his shoes to walk away, and that rock came right down in that chair, busted the chair apart. Of course, I came on the scene right away, called the city out, and they said, you got to get out of this building right now. Yeah. And so what I didn't know is that building was leaning to the north, literally, and we couldn't see it because there was a lot of paneling we'd put up, drop ceilings and whatnot. And so we evacuated everybody, put them in a warehouse area, and I remember the city asking me this question: when do you think you can do something new, different, better? We had been looking around at some old properties to possibly fix them up, and the costs weren't that much different because of asbestos and all those issues, to be able to shelter the homeless. And $1.5 million is what we finally would come up with. And that's an impossibility. When you got a $200,000 a year budget and you got a $1.5 million need just to build it. Yeah. And I remember as I began to go out and kind of cast that vision, some people were saying, you'll never do it. It will never happen. Yeah. I didn't know it was going to happen. Right. All I knew is there was a need. God said that you're supposed to do this thing the best that I understood. Yeah. And that thing was, you're supposed to reach out to the homeless. You're supposed to reach out to the hungry. You're supposed to reach out to those who are broken and suffering. And in order to do that, you have to have a place for them to come. Yeah.
And do it well. Don't do it in a building that's crumbling and falling
Exactly.
down, but
that's
do
dangerous.
it with excellence. Do it well.
Right. Yeah. And I appreciate the founders who back in 1953 took an old place on 4th Street and then moved in 1959 to that old place in North Topeka, which back then the building was a lot better shape. But by 1989, it's not. Sure. And it was over 100 years old. And so I remember people saying, Barry, it will never happen, number one. Number two is that if you build it, you'll never be able to pay for the utilities in it.
Probably raised your budget a little higher than the $200
Exactly. Exactly. There's a number of stories in the book, In Darkness the Light Still Shines, around this particular issue, kind of fast forwarding. When we even got in the building, we had this beautiful kitchen that has served millions of meals now. We didn't have a cook. We did not have a cook. And I'm looking at this, is that there's not enough resources. There's not enough people could even volunteer to help us serve the meals. Yeah. And so Topeka Rescue Mission's history has been one impossibility after another. Yeah. Well, today, not only do we have that shelter, not only do we raise the $1.5 million, not only do we do that, but we've also seen God and this community come together around so many things. Built a Hope Center in the year 2000 for women and families. Distribution service, Children's Palace later on that we're currently in this podcast. And a warehouse and programs to reach out in the community. And so here's the thing about impossibilities with me, is that I never know for sure how God's going to work things out.
Right.
I would love to put everything in a formula and be able to write a book and say, this is the way it works. If you do this and then this
right?
and then this. Yeah, it works for everybody. And then everybody would be great. And then everybody would say, Barry, you're the hero. Mm-hmm. God has kept me really dependent on waiting on him and following him and being to that place where he's going to do whatever he wants, however he wants to do it. However he wants to do it. So we're in that kind of situation right now, to where, what is God going to do to help address this mountain that we're looking at of finances? And again, if people haven't heard about this, or maybe they've heard a little bit about it, is that the Rescue Mission's financial needs, with all the programs that we've been doing, which are many, we're feeding about 500 to 600,000 meals a year to hungry people in the community. We're sheltering over 2,000 different homeless people. It's not just about sheltering. It's about education programs. Mm-hmm. We have a 12-week job readiness program. We have a 1-year program. We have a 2-year program for people to help them get on their feet. What you're doing with the Children's Palaces is addressing the earliest we can to break the cycle of homelessness. What you're doing here with your team is reaching out to some children who have been broken and traumatized. Their families have. It's not just that they were homeless. There's been other things that have happened in their lives, and trying to address that so you can prevent future homelessness, prevent future incarceration, prevent some of the pain and suffering that we have experienced on kind of what we call down the river. Mm-hmm. Terry Hund and her team reaching out to the victims of human trafficking. The whole supportive services of the Rescue Mission and the 1,600 or so volunteers that Kim Turley helps coordinate, and just the many different things that we do with the Topeka Rescue Mission. Those budgetary needs are a lot bigger.
It's a little
today.
More than just shelter.
It's a little more than shelter, and the hope that is instilled within the people.
Yes.
You know, there have been some suggestions that all we do is we just provide a place for people to live. Well, when you have mental illness and you have a drug addiction, when you have been victimized through the trauma of all kinds of abuses, sexual and otherwise, in this life, that requires some special help for people to get what they need. Jessica, you work on the front lines of intervention and trauma. What does that look like? I mean, if people don't understand what you see when individuals come here, what does that mean?
Well, I see families for the majority of my day. And so I'm seeing parents who are hopeless and broken, who were, the majority of them, abused growing up, some physically, most verbally, some sexually, some all three. And as a result of that abuse, they never really had a very good example of how to be a parent, how to respect themselves, how to respect other people. And so their children are growing up in that same mentality. They're growing up not understanding that they have a place in this world. And as a result, they're being victimized by victims. And that cycle is repeating itself over and over again. So we can have kids come in here. We can have families come in here. We can have parents get frustrated with us because of the structure and the rules and guidelines that all of our programs have in place to keep people safe. Got to have a balance of structure and nurture. But we can have a parent get offended, cuss us out, yell at us, and we can make the choice to say, get out of here. You don't meet my standard of what I want this program to look like. Or we can understand that person's cuss words, that person's reaction is coming out of a place of fear, of survival, and of what they've known for decades. And so when we understand that their actions are not personal attacks towards us or what we're trying to do, but they're coping skills that they have picked up to stay alive to this point in life, and these are the same coping and survival skills that their children have picked up, it's a lot easier for us to minister to the actual need instead of getting offended, taking it personally, and pushing them away.
Right.
And so we have to recognize that every single person, whether they're living in a camp by the river, whether they're coming into the rescue mission for shelter, whether they're coming to the palace for some supports for their family, whether they're going to an educational program, whether they're coming for a food box, whatever that need is, they're obviously in some sort of crisis, and they've obviously had some type of trial, more often than not, trials in years of them, leading them to their place where they're coming to us for need. And if we simply give them a food box, give them a bed, give them some childcare service, and that's it, then what's going to happen is they're going to continue to live in that same cycle. Their children are going to continue to live in that same cycle, and we're never going to break it. We're never going to break the cycle. You were talking earlier about when the rescue mission was falling apart, and everybody's saying, you got to do something. You got to do something. You know, you need more space. You need a better facility. You got to do something. And the need was impossible. The mountain was impossible.
That's right.
But you sought the Lord. You walked forward by faith. The mountain fell, and God provided for the impossible. And when I came on board, so moved here in 2009, and I remember at that point in time, everybody was saying to the rescue mission, you got to do something. Yep. There's a lot of homeless people in our city,
For sure.
and you don't have enough beds to accommodate all of the folks that are in need. You got to do something, Topeka Rescue Mission. You got to do something. And so we got a variance to the code from the city to do something, be able to put cots out in common areas. So we don't have enough beds, let's add some cots. We're doing something, but the community is saying, you got to do something more, because that's not really a very good long-term permanent fix. So we started to do something. I remember being in the meetings where we're starting to draw plans. We're starting to find property. We're starting to build another shelter, because that's what everybody expects us to do. Makes sense.
Right.
There's a need. Community wants us to meet it.
That's what we've done before. We're pretty good at doing that. We'll do it again.
Let's do it again. Let's build another shelter. But I also remember that as we were in the process of drawing up those plans, God said, wait a minute.
Yeah, sure did.
Wait a minute. You need to stop, because if you just build another shelter, if you just add more beds, if you just add some more blankets, if you just add some more meals, then 10 years from now, you're going to need to build another shelter.
Or less.
Exactly. Because the needs are going to keep coming, because you're not getting to the root to why people are becoming homeless in the first place.
Right.
So we shifted. We said, you know what? Shelter is absolutely a need. But what is also a need is finding out, why are they becoming homeless generation after generation after generation? And that was where the community outreach programs were born. That was where NetReach was born, Restore Hope was born, Street Reach was born, the Children's Palace was born, because we recognized that it's not enough to just provide the basic necessities. We have to tackle the root causes of why people are becoming homeless if we want to see them really overcome for good homelessness and not have their kids come through our doors for shelter unless they're coming to volunteer.
You know, Jessica, you bring up something that I think really we want to dive into further, is we were doing a good thing. The community had asked us to do a certain thing to shelter the homeless, but we came up to that place of where we started to go in a direction we were familiar with.
Yep.
And then we felt the Lord said no.
Right.
And then we had to pause, stop, and seek Him.
Yep.
I want to talk about that a little bit more here in just a moment. And so stay tuned with us on In Darkness the Light Still Shines. We're going to talk about when we get up to a certain place where we're doing something good and we think that this is what God wants us to do, and He takes us a different direction. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
This production is hosted by Topeka Rescue Mission Ministries, bringing help and hope through faith with its sleeves rolled up. If you would like to support Topeka Rescue Mission Ministries, text TRM Give to 77977 and start giving today.
Welcome back, everybody. We've just been talking about doing a good thing, as Topeka Rescue Mission had been. About 10 years ago, when you came, the community as well as the rescue mission was trying to figure out how we're going to accommodate more people. And so we found a piece of ground to build a shelter on, and we're going forward with this. The thing that was kind of comforting to me is I'd done this a couple of times before. I knew how to do this, relatively speaking. Go out, you have a design, you make it so it's great, you work out the programs, and then you try to raise the money for it. And so this was going to be something, if I recall, over $7 million this time. Not $1.5 million like the first time, not a $2.2 million for the Hope Center. Now prices have increased. The needs are great. We wanted to put a child care center in it, and it was going to be over $7 million. And so, okay, we've got it. And then there was a pause. I'll never forget the pause. It was like, you know, in my words, it was like God said to me in so many ways, you didn't ask me if you were supposed to do this. And I'm saying, okay, Lord, look, we got more homeless than we can deal with. We got a temporary variance from the city. And what that means is temporary means that we'll let you do this, putting people on cots on the floor in various places temporarily until you come up with a plan. And so, you know, I love the people of the city. We have a great city. But literally, code enforcement was coming along, and city leaders were saying, when are you going to have a solution for this? And so I said, we got one. We got a solution. We're going to build a shelter. And so we had this, I'll never forget, we had this advisory committee, had a great idea. We're going to build we were going to put it in a warehouse where our big warehouse is now. And we got the community around. We had a big announcement. Everybody came, not everybody came, but 200 plus people came to the Great Overland Station. We announced what we're going to do. We gave tours away. And then I felt like the Lord shifted that over to a place right behind the rescue mission. We had another press conference. We got everybody together. I got all the codes and everything together. And I felt like we then said, no, we need to build another building because there's some environmental hazards with that. And so I got everybody together. It's a $7 million project. And people are kind of questioning, do you know what you're doing? The board of directors legitimately were saying, do you know what you're doing? And in the midst of all that, I felt like God said, you never really asked me. You responded to a crisis. You responded to a need. You responded to the compelling evidence and the pressure that was on. That you're the experts. You're the ones that are supposed to do this. You reach the homeless, so build another shelter. And I felt like the Lord said, don't build another shelter. And that was tough. That was really tough. And we went into some heavy-duty prayer on that. And I remember coming to you and to some other advisors and saying, I think that credibility is going to go down the tubes on this one because we said this is what we were going to do. Twice. Actually, almost 3 times. And so people were then questioning, do you really know what you're doing? Right. And I remember you saying something to me. It was, is this your Isaac? What do you mean by that?
Well, interestingly enough, I don't remember saying that.
Okay. Well, very good.
But,
now that we're recording.
No, but I imagine this was something that everybody was looking to you to fix, and a great plan had been established. You went, you sought out the counsel of others, and it was almost as if this is finally the right place, the right thing, the right time. This is going to be this amazing shelter that's going to have it all. We were going to have emergency shelter. We were going to have showers for folks to come in off the streets. I remember we were going to have long-term shelters for families and men. And I mean, it was going to be such a variety of services that we were going to provide. We were going to have the child care within it. We were going to have the medical and dental clinic in it. I mean, this was going to be
state of the art,
phenomenal. And you had gone before the community and you had said, you know, we got it. You know, you told us to provide for the need. We came up with this amazing plan. Here it is. And so you're holding on to it like it's the promise. We finally got it. We finally are able to meet the need. We finally have this great plan. And just like Abraham looked at Isaac as, you know, finally the promise has arrived. The great plan for the future essentially has finally been given to me. And when God told Abraham, I want you to go to the top of that mountain and I want you to give it up. I want you to sacrifice it. I want you to put it to death. And Abraham's going, that doesn't make sense. I know you told me to do this. I know you told me to give birth to the son. I know you told me that you were going to do a great thing through this son. I can't possibly put it to death. What would everybody around me think? What would everybody who's looking at me think after I've already told them that this is my promised child? And so you had already gone out and basically said the same thing to the community. We have the answer. We have the promised child, so to speak, that's going to be such a solution to homelessness within our community. But then God said, you know what? I did potentially tell you to go down that road, or at least led you to believe that that's what you were supposed to be
brought me
doing.
To do many years before.
Out of assumption, maybe, as you say now. And so he then brought you to that point that said, are you willing? Are you willing to go onto the top of the mountain? Are you willing to admit in front of others that I've got to put this idea to death, essentially? I've got to put this dream, this plan, this shelter that was going to be a hope for our community, maybe. I need to put it to death and trust God with the end result. And I can imagine that was a very humbling and humiliating experience for you to have to once again go in front of television cameras and say, look, we're not going to do this. But look what God did through that. Just like God, through Abraham and Isaac, didn't cause the promise to die, provided another opportunity, the ram in the bush, for the promise of God to be fulfilled. God did the same thing with you and with the rescue mission. So the shelter was put to death, essentially. But look at the ram in the bush that God provided. Instead of the shelter, look how many different ministry opportunities have been birthed and brought life into our community beyond what a shelter in and of itself could have provided.
Well, I don't think I had really taken time to ask the question of what do we do about why homelessness occurs. I mean, that had been in the back of my mind, but we just had never had the time to kind of get off the merry-go-round to be able to examine that. And if we weren't going to build a shelter, we still needed to have a response. You know, we are having more homeless than we know what to deal with or can deal with in regards to safely sheltering people. And so what does that mean, Lord? And yeah, you're right. I had a good plan, and then I came back. I said, I've got a better plan, and then I have a better than better plan, and now I've got the bestest of best plans, and people are going, yeah, right. And so God took us into the High Crest neighborhood. He took us into the human trafficking area. He took us into working with youth and helping youth to acquire skills to be able to do urban ministry. He took us into some educational programs. He took us into the Children's Palace. He took us into trauma interventions and those kind of things to help us to be able to learn some things we really need to learn, change the conversation in the community as well as beyond that would not have occurred if we just built another shelter. I'm not saying we never will build another shelter. We're kind of at a crossroads again of homeless. So we don't have as many coming into the shelter because of all these programs. We're helping people move out of the shelter quicker. But now our new crossroads is this, is that are we supposed to do everything that we're doing today? And our finances in 2019 have shown us otherwise. They have said, nope, there's not enough money for you to do everything that you're doing. That's on the surface. Just like we were supposed to build another shelter, we thought, and God said do something different. And now because of a lack of finances in 2019, we haven't been able to project going much further into the year when we finally came to the community and said, okay, here's the reality. So the big question today is, can you afford to do everything that you're doing? And that's a legitimate question. And we're examining that, and we're looking at, well, maybe God has said enough, time's up for this and that and the other thing. The other question is this: can the community afford for us not to do everything that we're doing? And that's an incredible question. Now, what we have seen is an incredible outpouring of generosity in the community since about nearly a month ago. We announced that we are in a financial need, that potentially the doors of the rescue mission can close if all giving stopped.
Sure.
Giving was slowing down so much, not only here, across the entire nation,
Right.
but was slowing down so much that we looked at literally possibly closing the doors by September 15th, which is unthinkable. 66-year-old ministry in this community, providing a vital service to so many broken people. I mean, there's so many people that I run into, like the lady I ran into Saturday afternoon at one of these fundraising events, that she came up to me and she said, I don't know if you remember me, but I stayed with you 15 years ago and I didn't want to come to the mission.
Wow.
She said, the last thing I wanted to do in my life, but I came to the mission and you guys saved my life.
Wow.
You showed me hope. And she said, I'm working and have had 2 full-time jobs and now I've got one, I'm getting paid enough. And she said, I'm at this event today because I want to say thank you. Because you changed my life. You showed me my value in Christ. You showed me my value in this community. You showed me my value to myself. And so we have so many people in this community that have come forward now to say, this is valuable.
Absolutely.
The question is that we'll be asking going forward, as people are legitimately asking, can you afford to do everything you're doing? We can afford to do it as long as there is compassionate capabilities of people investing their heart into someone's heart who's broken. And that's really what it's always been about.
Right.
There's no sustainability plan here other than touching the compassionate hearts of a community who love their neighbor as themselves and are willing to sacrificially oftentimes give to help those in need.
Right.
The bigger question that we have to ask now is, can we afford not to do this? What kind of suffering may we see in this community that would be so horrific if we're not here doing what we do? God only knows that, and I don't think He wants to allow that to happen. I don't think that most people in this community want that to happen either. Going forward, we're going to probably have some numbers that will be showing the community in regards to that potential impact if the Topeka Rescue Mission wasn't here or couldn't do the kind of services that it does. So here's the kind of the takeaway, I think, today, is that there are many impossible situations that people face in their lives. It could be just very personal to someone who's watching or listening right now. Could be in a marriage situation. Could be in a health crisis that they're going through. Could be in a job crisis. And they've always done it a certain way. And God may be saying, come to me, listen to me. I may want to take you a different direction to do something very vastly different than what you've done. One of the biggest things that was vastly different, I had not gone to the public with a community appeal since 1986. A couple of years ago, we went to the community and we said, in order to continue doing everything that we're doing today, this is what we're going to need. But it wasn't a, hey, we may close the doors.
Sure.
I didn't want to do this.
Right.
I did not want to go to the community. I wanted just to pray, watch God take this like He always has before. Right. And finally, I came to the place that God was saying, I want to take this a different direction this time, Barry.
Well, and one of the things that keeps coming to the forefront of my mind in terms of one of the whys behind why God may be wanting to take this a different direction is because I keep hearing over and over again from people in the community, we had no idea that the rescue mission did this. Right. We had no idea that the rescue mission did that. I think a large population believes that we are still just shelter and don't realize all of the things that the ministry is doing to tackle that root cause of homelessness, to not just impact today, but future for our community. And I feel like a big reason why God had you come forward and share transparently with the community is because He wanted to extend that invitation, not only for people to become more aware of what the rescue mission does, but to invite people to partner, and not just financially, but through coming alongside as volunteers and in different capacities to really, as a community, help a very broken and hurting group of people. And so if they don't know everything that the rescue mission is attempting to do to heal people who are broken and help them overcome, not only for today, but for the next generation down the road, they can't come alongside and help. But by making the need known it's as if God is saying, come be a part of this. Come be a part of this. The need is great. The need for finances is great, but the need for support all around is great. The need for people to come alongside and be aware and help, however God puts it on their hearts to help, is huge. And God's taken the ministry a specific direction for the first 30 plus years of your time here, and he's shifting. And he's shifting for a lot of different reasons, but I do believe that one of those reasons is because he wants the community to not just say, Topeka Rescue Mission, it's on you to fix it, but to say, Topeka, together, we're going to embrace and lock arms, and we're going to tackle this together to make a difference for generations to come.
That's what has made the most sense to me, and I'm actually excited about that. It's been great to be able to take this and run with it for all of these years, and to have people stand behind us. Standing behind is a little bit differently than standing with.
Yeah.
And now I think the community, it's a time to come together to really have what the Capital Journal called a robust conversation about this going forward. I'm actually excited about that, and I can very much see that the Lord is using this time to go to the community, so it's not just that place down there that does that stuff that we don't know exactly what they do, but we're going to be more engaged in really reaching our neighbors and loving them and caring for them in very unique ways. So we still have what's called the impossibility ahead of us, because there is a mountain of finances that need to be done in this robust conversation, but it is God's, and he will have his way, and we will be staying close with him and looking for him. And as he makes navigational adjustments in our direction here, we will stay close to him and watch what he's going to do. Just in closing, last Friday we had an opportunity to reach out to the unsheltered, who are very close to the rescue mission. We've been reaching out for a number of years, especially this last year, because that number's been growing. And what an incredible time it was to just be in the homeless camp and work with our different agencies, Vallejo and the Health Department, Community Action, the City of Topeka, Topeka Police Department, just being out there with folks who really, for a different reason in life, a different reason that they don't come into the rescue mission like some other people do, we're still reaching and engaging with them and loving them. And just to see that opportunity we have to make a difference in people's lives. So thank you for being with us today on In Darkness, a Light Still Shines. This is a multifaceted discussion we've had here today, but I guess probably, Jessica, maybe the biggest takeaway here is that if you're kind of wondering where God is going to take you, instead of trying to figure it out on your own, just trust him and wait on him and watch what God will do, because your impossible situation is not impossible to God. Right. Thank you for joining us for In Darkness, a Light Still Shines.
Thank you to Furniture Mall of Kansas for sponsoring the In Darkness, a Light Still Shines video podcast. We appreciate your support.
Dear Lord, thank you for the many ways that you take the impossible and make it possible. May I see your hand of provision and faithfulness come forth as I look past the obstacles and trust you for your purposes to be established. Help me to let go of worry and grab hold of faith. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks for joining us. Our goal is to inspire, inform, and equip you to engage in the community around you. Join us next week for another episode of In Darkness, a Light Still Shines.